Welcome back to session 2 of the Invite One Back live webinar series, Laying Down the Foundation for Invitation, brought to you by Pushpay and the National Eucharistic Congress. This 3-part series is focused on inviting our neighbors who we once saw in the pews back to the parish. And we have some good ideas on how to keep them coming back each week. My name is Christian with Pushpay, and I'm joined by NEC's Joel Stepanek, who has been involved with guiding so many parishes over the past 20 years. But before we jump in, let us know where you're tuning in from. We had a pretty diverse crowd last session, but I get goldfish brain sometimes. So even if you were here last session, drop it in the chat where you're watching from, and what are you looking forward to most this summer? Let us know in the chat, and I'm going to welcome you, Joel, and ask you, what are you looking forward to this summer?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like the answer that I need to give is the 10th National Eucharistic Congress happening in Indianapolis, Indiana from July 17th to 21st. But the National Eucharistic Pilgrimages are happening right now. I've been looking forward to that. And honestly, after the Congress, my family and I are going to do a little road trip on that side of the country because my wife's family, my in-laws, are in Philadelphia. My family's in Wisconsin. We've got some close friends that live in Chicago. So we're going to do like a little road trip for the week after Congress, 2 weeks actually after Congress, to see all those people. So I would say July, just the month of July.
The month, I like it.
The whole month.
I was going to say, yeah, I am excited. I'm not sure if I personally, Pushpay will be at NEC. I'm not sure if I personally will be there. I hope I am. So certainly looking forward to that. Yeah. And then, for me, in August, I'm heading to Pennsylvania to see some family and to celebrate my my good buddy getting married.
That's exciting.
So,
Weddings
oh my
in
God.
August are good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And well, I've actually been to the venue that he's getting married at, and it's a hotel, but they have this huge arboretum that is so beautiful, and it's going to be so nice.
That sounds incredible.
But we have a ton of people. Yeah. A lot of New Jersey. I see West Virginia, Washington, North Carolina. Oh, this is great. Monument, Colorado. Hello, hello. I'm in Denver. Oh, this is great. I thought I saw someone was looking forward. Yeah, fresh veggies from the garden. Ellen, love it. I absolutely love it. There's nothing better than fresh veggies. Which I will say, it was a lot easier growing fresh veggies in Pennsylvania when I lived out there than it is in Colorado. It's a little harder. So I'm certainly missing out on that. Oh, this is great. Well, we're going to keep it moving here. As a recap from session 1, Joel, you and I talked about improving parish culture, because if you do successfully invite someone back to your parish, but nothing about your parish has changed or improved, and the culture's the same, then those people probably are not going to come back the next week or any week after that, except for, Christmas and Easter. So Joel, why don't you give us the 2-minute highlight from last session?
Yeah, so you'll remember, if you were at our last session, that culture is everything that surrounds us, and we have a parish culture regardless of if we're trying to create one or not. So when we get intentional about parish culture, we are creating the right growing conditions. Since we're talking about gardening and vegetables, you can think of culture like the soil in which everything is going to grow. So if we're going to invite people back, or we're going to grow our ministry, we have to have the right soil to produce the fruit we're looking for. And there are 5 essential elements, or let's call them nutrients. Let's go with the vegetable analogy. 5 essential nutrients that we've got to have in the soil to create the right parish culture. The first is hospitality. What does it really mean to welcome people? How do we reinforce that sense of welcome? And when we say hospitality, are we welcoming people on our terms or on their terms? The second essential nutrient is substance and fidelity to church teaching. Substance, we're offering something of depth, something people can't find out in the world, not just a community center. And we're faithful to the church's teaching. We're providing the beauty and tradition that the Catholic Church has to offer. That leads into the third piece, which, if we have that fidelity to the church's teaching, we can also lean into our unique charism. Every parish culture is unique because every parish has a different charism that they live out really well. The fourth essential nutrient is commitment and accompaniment. Commitment to accompaniment. We're committed to walking with people. Do we have a culture that doesn't just invite people in, but is ready to walk with them through all their phases of life? And the fifth essential element is fortitude. Are we brave and bold, going beyond the status quo so that we can do what is necessary in our ministry?
Yes, yes. And so we're continuing that conversation here in session 2. But if you didn't see the last session, don't worry, you'll still be able to follow along in today's session. Of course, we do recommend you go back and rewatch session 1, just so you're the most equipped to make meaningful change in your parish. Because all sessions are recorded. I want to let everyone know all sessions are recorded and everyone will receive the replays of each session, regardless if you were here since session 1 or if you sign up along the way. So yes, recordings will be available and they will be emailed to you. And if for some reason you don't see it, maybe it's in your spam folder, hopefully not, but you never know with email. And if for some reason you can't see it, just reach out to us and we'll get you taken care of. But we're going to dive into today's session. But before we do that, Joel, could you lead us in prayer, please?
I would be happy to. So wherever you are, let's pray with one another. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord, we give you thanks for this day. I ask you to bless all of us across the country, that you would grow fruit in our ministry that will remain, that you would give us the wisdom we need to discern how we will serve you well, and bless all of those that we serve, that as we go out to invite them back into our parishes and into our communities, we may have a spirit of joy, a spirit of boldness, and ultimately a spirit of true charity and a desire to bring those people close to you. We make this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay. Let's set the stage here. We're setting the stage for inviting someone back to your parish. And to do that, you first need to assess your parish's health. How do you begin assessing the health of your parish, Joel?
I think the first piece, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, is to be honest as we lean into some of these questions and think about, what are the realities of the world in which we live in, which is still a post-pandemic recovery. A lot of things shifted and changed over the course of the last several years. And some of us, even though we know that, are still perhaps operating on it in business as usual mode. And we really can't act in business as usual mode. So when we look forward, we're going to assess where we're at now, and we'll assess the fruits of our ministry. So like I said, culture is that soil. Let's stick with the garden analogy. Culture is the soil in which things are growing. And there's probably stuff growing in your parish right now. There's things that are happening. There's fruit. Is it the fruit that you want, though? And ultimately, is it the fruit that we want to invite people back to? This is where we get into some of those ideas of substance, welcome, hospitality, and we can test that. So we can assess the fruit that our ministry is bearing by checking out the quality of that fruit. And when we do that, we want to know a couple of different aspects of like what type of fruit we're bearing and the quality of that fruit that we're bearing. So before we get into that, though, I want you to think about your parish and other great parishes you've been to. What good fruits have you seen different parishes bear when you go, especially in places that are worth inviting people back to? What are some of the fruits of those parishes? Maybe it's your parish, maybe it's other parishes that you've been able to visit or parishes you know of. What are some of the good fruits you see those parishes bearing? Drop that stuff in the chat. I'd love to see what some of your thoughts are and what some of your experiences are before I share some of my ideas of what I think are the qualities of good fruit that a parish can bear. What have you seen? Let me know down in that chat. Angie says fellowship and getting together. Yeah, good sense of community. The idea of a radical welcome is huge. Being seen and noticed. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Great note.
Youth are involved. Love that.
Speaks to my heart with the history of youth ministry. And then Kathleen, families participate in all aspects. That's really key. Kristen has some many hours of reconciliation, 40 hours devotion. There is a parish. Actually, there are several parishes in the Phoenix area where I live that offer confession on a regular basis. And anytime you go, there's a line. When it comes down to the sacrament of reconciliation, it really is if you build it, they will come. So seeing that and having that as kind of a ministry, that is really huge. Kristen says joy, contagious joy, and disciples making disciples from Jessica. These are great. A lot of ideas of community, Eucharistic adoration, intercessory prayer teams, active ministries for men. Chat, you have got some great ideas today, and I love to see it. I've got a couple of ideas too that I want to share. And this is really about the types of fruit that we're bearing. And obviously, all of our ministries bear a unique type of fruit, but these are 3 elements that I think are critical in fruit that your ministry bears and kind of like the kind of fruit that it bears. So here's the first one, and some people touched on this. The fruit that our ministry bears has to be Eucharistic centered. So anything that we're doing, any community activity, any ministry, any small group has to point back to the Eucharist, in particular, the Sunday liturgy. I will dare to say that the Sunday liturgy is the most important thing that you can do at your parish. And that's because our Sunday liturgy impacts most of the people that we will serve. It will impact 95% of your parish that is involved. The place that they're involved is at the Sunday liturgy. Think about it. If you have people that are coming to some of your other ministries, there may be ministries that people go to, but maybe those people aren't ready to go yet to Mass. But our ultimate goal is to bring them there. And that percentage of people isn't as high as the rest of your community. So I'd ask you this question in assessing that fruit, because all of our ministries need to be Eucharistic centered and point back to the Sunday liturgy. So any fruit that we're bearing is not good fruit if it's not pointing people back to the Sunday Mass and pointing people back to the Eucharist. So you can ask these questions as you're assessing the quality of the fruit your ministry bears right now. Where does most of your time, energy, and money go to? Where are you putting that? Is it towards making sure that the Sunday liturgy is welcoming, beautiful, reverent, inviting? We'll talk more about that a little bit later on in this webinar. But that's the first question we want to ask. When we look at a ministry, are we spending time, money, and energy in this ministry to push people back to the Sunday Mass, or does it kind of exist in isolation? Because that's the second question to ask. Are all of your ministries explicitly connected to the Sunday liturgy in some way? And that doesn't mean that it's an immediate push people to the Sunday Mass, but is that the end goal of every single ministry? That's the first piece. The second piece we can test if we want to see the quality of our fruit we're bearing. In the fruit that our parish bears, do people feel seen? That means that every person has some meaningful connection to the parish community. There are seekers at your parish community, people who are interested, people who are curious, but no consumers. Instead, you have collaborators. Is your ministry, are your ministries, is the fruit that your church bearing, is it producing consumers or collaborators? That's one of those tough questions that we have to ask. And we all come to Mass and to our church to be fed. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I think that's vital that people come to a parish to be fed, to consume. But if that's all we do, we don't have any desire to give back into our community. People don't tithe. People don't give up their time. People aren't even willing to welcome others into this because there's this zero-sum mentality of, well, if you take my pew, there's not going to be a spot for me. So are you producing consumers or collaborators? And do people feel seen in your parish? When people walk in, would they say, I have meaningful connections here? If I stopped going to Mass on Sunday, somebody would notice. Here's the third piece that we want to evaluate when we're thinking about the fruit our ministry bears is that invitation into ministries is natural. Are you bearing fruit that is by its very nature invitational, or are you producing a closed loop? If you have a ministry in a church that is open and inviting, it just is natural for people to invite people in. People want to share what they're excited about. Are people excited about what's happening at your parish enough to invite them in? This could mean that they're excited to invite them to a number of like entry points. You don't just have to have people excited to invite others to Mass, because maybe Mass isn't like the first step for a lot of folks. But if all of our ministries are Eucharistic centered and pointing towards Mass, you could have community functions as entry points, like parish picnics, parish festivals that invite the broader community in. At the parish that I attended growing up, we had a wonderful parish picnic that tons of people who didn't attend the parish went to, and that was the idea. The idea was to give them an experience of our community and then to invite them into a deeper engagement and an experience of the liturgy. Maybe you have prayer groups or small groups that people join that have kind of that entry point. Are those open and invitational? We have opportunities for Eucharistic adoration or non-Mass worship that we can invite people into. And then, of course, the Mass. But in all of these areas, if we have this and our ministries are bearing sort of this fruit of different ministerial opportunities, is invitation natural to those things? Now, all of this becomes important because as we assess the fruit that our ministry is bearing, we have to contend with the fact that there was a big pruning that took place just a couple of years ago. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, 24% of adult Catholics attended Mass. Now, that's already not a great number. Let's just call that one out right here. 1/4 of Catholics, 1 in every 4 people who self-identified as a Catholic, attended Mass weekly, which is the obligation for the Catholic Church, weekly Mass attendance. That number is now down to just 17% who are attending Mass. That's it. So 1 in 4 before COVID, and now it's even less than that. It's less than 1 in 5 will attend Mass weekly. So let's just speak what we all know. If the Eucharistic sacrifice of the Mass is the source and summit of our faith, that means then 4 out of every 5 people who are baptized Catholics and probably still self-identify as Catholic in some way are missing out on that experience. That should break our heart. That should break our heart the same way that our neighbors not being present as the big community barbecue breaks our heart, or that a family member not being present at Thanksgiving or Christmas breaks our heart. And we've got to contend with that because that is probably impacting your parish, but maybe you don't know to the degree. I have a question for you to throw into the chat. What has your parish's Mass attendance been like since COVID? Do you have a percentage? Again, you don't have to answer this question, but do you know what that's been like? In fact, I'll just kind of zoom it out a little bit. Do you have a way of assessing that? And this is a great time for you to share maybe some ideas. How have you assessed your Mass attendance since COVID? And what are you kind of contending with as we're all in the trenches together? Is that resonating with you that you've seen numbers lower? I know for some parishes, maybe they've seen a boost in numbers depending on what they did. But do you have a way of assessing things? How have you assessed that? Think through that for a second, and maybe it's more of a rhetorical question, but do you have a way of knowing who's there and who is missing? And again, we see some people, there's a quarterly Mass count you do, which I think is key. Some people are seeing, like, again, a 20% decline. I think, like, you know, as you look at some of these Mass counts that happen every October, and I think that's kind of the standard thing in a lot of dioceses, like every October we do kind of a Mass count. I mean, that'll give you an idea of like what's happening then. But what about kind of like weekly tracking, you know? And again, what's measured gets what's measured gets accomplished, you know? So I think that that's key here. So as we're looking at this, I want to give you some guidance for how you might conduct a little self-assessment for your parish as you're preparing for how you kind of begin to invite one back. Because the key here is that ultimately we're trying to create ministries that are invitational, but invitational with a purpose. That's why we want to assess the fruit. What fruit is our ministry? What kind of fruit? What's the quality of fruit, I guess I should say, of our ministries? Is it Eucharistic? Is it invitational? Do people feel connected there, or are we just creating consumers? Do they have a desire to connect with other people? All of those things are key because this is the fruit we're going to give to people we invite back. But now we got to ask ourselves, well, who are we inviting back? So I've got a couple of questions for you to think through as far as how you might assess just the way that you'll go about conducting like an invite one back campaign or walking with one. So here are a couple of questions, and this is homework you're going to do after this call. One, what is the overall community demographic? I don't mean of your parish. I mean of the community in which your parish is situated. What does that overall demographic look like? What is your ethnic breakdown? What's the socioeconomic breakdown? What is the age breakdown? Your parish should be a snapshot of your broader community. Who do you need to reach out to? Think about it. Are there people right now you know, or groups of people that are missing from your parish? And maybe the first question will lead to the second question. Who isn't there that needs to be there? And maybe the next question after that is, why aren't they there? Another question you want to ask is, who is missing? Who did you lose and who walked away, especially during COVID? Who used to be there but isn't now? And this is a question even to pose to your community. Who do you know you used to see every week, but they're not there anymore? Looking at these upper questions, is your parish failing to reflect the broader community demographic? Do you know who's still missing or still watching live streams? Do you have that information where you could reach out to them? Are there people who aren't active in your parish directory as far as giving goes? Who doesn't have a record of giving? I'd love for you to, as you're assessing things, look at creating a roadmap for every ministry. We just talked about that. What's the entry point and what is the end point of your ministries? Think about that. Where does your budget go when you're creating things? And is it going to the right places? And then where do you spend the most time and energy? Thinking through these questions is a great afternoon activity. They will require a little bit of research, and creating a roadmap for every ministry can, again, require some honesty and can be kind of tough because you might find that there's some ministries that are just closed loops. That doesn't mean that they're bad things. It just means that maybe they need to come off of the parish life support system and be run independently. If there's a men's group that is not invitational, that does not point people back to mass, it's just kind of like a boys club for the same 12 guys who get together, that's not a bad thing. It just needs to meet in somebody's home now because somebody else needs the room, and the parish doesn't need to support that. And that time and energy and effort needs to go someplace else. So these are some questions that will help you conduct kind of a parish assessment of, are we ready, of how we kind of set up to do this invite one back campaign. Now, again, I'll toss out a question to you because maybe there are some things that you want to think through. What does your parish do right now to assess health? Maybe you're doing some of these things. Have you done any of these things at your parish? What has that looked like? Again, let's share a couple of ideas. But what does your parish do right now to assess health? Are there any things that you want to share with this group that you kind of think, yeah, this is something that's helped us as we've looked ahead? Drop some of your answers in the chat. And Christian and I will look some of those things over before we get into this next session. But what does your parish do right now to assess health? And have you tried any of those ideas that we just had up on the last slide?
Yeah, and while we wait for people to answer in the chat, I also just want to acknowledge from the last question, we're we see the national statistics, and since COVID, mass attendance is down, and this doom and gloom, and that's not fun to hear. And unfortunately, that is true for a lot of parishes. I do want to say from looking in the chat here, I love seeing that that's not everyone's case here. I saw a handful of comments saying attendance is up. We're having more young families join in. Like that genuinely makes me happy because there is a lot of doom and gloom painted from COVID, from all of this, shift. So to see that it's possible to bring more attendance to mass, and that some of you are seeing those results right now, just makes me really happy.
Yeah, I think that if you're seeing some of those results now, and some of you are dropping some great ideas for assessments and things that you've done together at your parish, if you're already at a place where things are strong and growing, then you're going to be able to launch into this invite one back campaign in a big way. And if you're not there yet, that is totally fine because we're going to help you shore some of those things up over the next couple of sessions and through the rest of this session. I think that either place, if you're operating from a place where you're growing, let's go full steam ahead. And if you're like, yeah, we've been in the decline, there are pieces that we'll talk through that are going to help you get all of the way there. And I think that that's pretty key. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about building a solid foundation and how we can do that. There are two mindset shifts that your whole team is going to have to engage as you enter into this. We've talked about one a couple of times already, and it's going to come through as we're doing the assessments, and that is honesty. We have to be honest as we're looking at the data about what's going well. And if things are going well, I'll say this, if things are going well, you still need to do the assessment. And I still think that you have to find places where you can grow. But there's an additional piece for all of you who are growing and like, yeah, there are young families showing up. Mass attendance is up 20%. Tithing is up. I saw all of these pieces. Do you know how you did it? A lot of times we assess and we troubleshoot for problems. And that's where we think honesty is. Like, oh, honesty is, hey, things are going wrong. Let's get honest about what isn't working. But honesty works both ways. If things are going well, do you know why they're going well? I have found, at least in my limited lived experience, that oftentimes we're not honest about what is going right. We throw out anecdotes about what we think is going right. Oh, why are young families showing up? Because we've got a dynamic priest. He's just incredible. But maybe it's not the dynamic priest. Maybe there's something else going on. Do you know what's working so you can continue to strengthen it and not lose it? That's where you folks who are having a growth year or a growth moment need to get honest. Are you being real about what is working? Do you know what's working? Or are you kind of throwing out anecdotes about what you think is working because you might be missing the mark? And in that, everybody on your team is going to have to be vulnerable. When we invite people back, it's a vulnerable moment. It's vulnerable to invite people into something that we love because we might get rejected. And practicing this type of vulnerability, this is a mindset shift among your leadership team, is going to happen as you do these assessments honestly. But it's also going to be a place where you're going to need to model this level of invitation for people. So vulnerability can be painful because it involves rejection. It involves exposing, things that we care about to the criticism or the attack of others, at least what can feel like an attack. But it's necessary because vulnerability ultimately is how we can enter these assessments and how we are able to have conversations with one another that invite people back. When we look at our leadership at our church, building a solid foundation to invite people back means that all of our ministry leaders need to be aligned on what we're doing here. There can't be anybody who's not willing to play the game. If you have one person in one ministry who's like, well, that's cool that the parish is doing that invite one back thing, we're not going to do that. That's not on our individual action plan. That's not on, this ministry's 5-year plan. And there's some places where it's like that, where you've got some ministries that are not rogue, but maybe out of necessity, they've just done their own strategic planning. Everybody needs to get aligned to this, and all of our leadership needs to be willing to align for the greater good. That might mean that some ministries have to fundamentally change their roadmap for people. That might mean some people need to get more invitational. It means that everybody is going to have to champion this invite one back initiative. It may also mean as leadership, you create some way to track these things, some kind of dashboard that you go back to say, how are we doing with inviting people back, with opening up our ministries, and with becoming more Eucharistic centered? When you do anything like this, you need to communicate well. So communication means parish-wide communication and internal communication. You can invite people back all day and have the best ministries, but if your parish doesn't know what's happening, they could easily subvert your effort with inhospitality or even cynicism to some of your efforts. Maybe do some parish-wide training or a homily series at a particular period of the year where you train people on how to invite others back, or you cast this larger vision. Inviting people back just can't be an internal initiative. It needs to be something for everybody. And as you're training people, you want to invite people to also go out and invite their friends or their family back. And that might mean encouraging them to be vulnerable, helping them learn how to make an invitation, and helping them learn how to share their story and to pray with other people, because those are the elements of the individual experience that will help them invite people back. And then as we look at each of our ministries, again, we want to ask, what is the entry point to that ministry? How easy is it to get involved? And what is the end point to that ministry? Does it point people back to the Eucharist? So looking at these 5 areas, which are, I think, the keys to building a solid foundation: honesty, vulnerability, leadership alignment, communication to your parish, and then making sure your ministries have a good entry point and have an end point in the mass. Where do you feel your parish is the most strong right now? Which of these areas do you think, yeah, you know what, actually, I think in that area, we're really good at being honest, or our leadership team is really aligned? Our ministries, they do know how to bring people in and they do know how to connect them to the mass. Where are you strong? I'd love to hear from you about what is working well at your parish. Where can you build from some strength here? And drop that in the chat. Share it with us. What is working well?
Yeah, while we wait, Joel, with your parish, what do you think is working well? If you had to pick one of these 5, which one resonates with you the most?
I think the parish that I go to right now does have a very good journey for ministries. I think that we are invitational. We have several different ministries that are open to folks and kind of at different levels. I think that's what I like about my parish and why I feel it's strong. There are ministries that are like not super duper religious, like that's an element of it, but are very popular. But they have the opportunity and the end game of bringing people to mass. So those are really good for people who have fallen away. The thing that comes to mind is coming up at the end of August, which is like a father-son camp out. It's wildly popular. Dads and their sons go and go up to a lake in northern Arizona. But it's a great experience for people who are super into their faith and are not at all. And it's such an easy invite to invite people back to something that is low pressure and has at its center a good that is even, anybody can agree on, yeah, I'd like more time with my son. So I think we do a really good job of that.
Nice. I actually see a question in the chat here. What parish do you actually belong to, Joel?
Yeah, I go to St. Timothy's Catholic Church in Mesa, Arizona.
Nice, nice. We have some answers here in the chat. Let's see. Patrick, the parish council is developing a parish-wide gathering to promote evangelization with disciples make disciples. So I would say that falls under ministry. Yeah?
Yeah,
I would think so.
Absolutely. And I think, those are key. And again, the parish council, even being involved in that shows some great leadership alignment there as well. So yeah, it's great.
Excellent.
Ideas here. And again, take a look through, as you're here, take a look at what other people are doing too. And I think like that is that is key. I think that's key. So
yeah. And talk about, we're creating this parish community, or we're creating a community within our parishes. We're creating a community right here on this webinar here. Like I love what's going on in the chat. It's not stagnant for very long, Joel. I've noticed it just keeps moving of people sharing their stories and sharing their ideas, and just absolutely love that. And so please, everyone watching, don't stop. We love it. We love the chat and we do read it afterwards. So this is wonderful. But let's talk about, shifting from setting the foundation to implementing best practices. The word or the phrase best practices, it's a broad phrase, right? Like, and what is best for one isn't necessarily best for another. So how do you narrow down what is a best practice specific to your parish?
Yeah, and I think every parish is going to be a little bit different. And so there are some general best practices that we'll throw out that you can discern. And I think look at what does this mean for your particular parish and how you live that out, because every parish has a different community culture and a different community feel. So let's get into some of those things, because I think these best practices will help you kind of enhance parish health, and then also provide you with a really important discussion about what some particular specific best practices might be for your area and what may work best, because you may need to try out some different things. So let's talk about the first one. I think one of the best practices that you can have in creating a welcoming culture is to get insight from outsiders. Like creating a welcoming culture at your parish is a best practice for creating a sustainable Eucharistic culture and Eucharistic experience. Now, what does a welcoming culture look like? Some best practices for determining what that looks like is, one, you've got to kind of know your local community and what that looks like for people. I think that that's critical in leaning into what does welcome mean for your particular community, which is why knowing the community demographic is so critical. I did a presentation a couple of months ago for a group of priests, and they were multiple generations of priests, and that's what the presentation was about. The presentation was about how we, as different generations of the priesthood, leverage the unique gifts of the Holy Spirit, and how that Holy Spirit works through each generation of the priesthood in a unique way. And so we did a generational exercise, though, where we said, what does hospitality look like for you? And one group of priests said, I think it'd be so great if everybody knew my name and approached me, and like people were super welcoming and just said hi at the door, and that's fine. And then another group of priests said, for me, it would look like a coffee shop. Like if there was like a coffee shop where people could gather and have conversations, I think that would be great. I was asked as a millennial, what would welcome look like for you? I'm like, it's the ability to have my family at Mass, but I don't know how I feel about a coffee shop. I might actually see that as kind of irreverent, and like people coming up to me and everybody like being in my face when I walk through the door. I don't know, I don't know that I would consider that to be welcoming. So it was really interesting to hear a generational perspective on welcome and hospitality. And I think that leaning into that maybe is important for every parish. Like, what does hospitality look like for your community? Because it might be different for every particular parish. Some ways that you can examine how you are creating a welcoming culture, though, that are best practices. I would encourage you to secret shop your parish. I worked in a retail store, and we would have secret shoppers come through and grade us on a bunch of different benchmarks for, cleanliness of the store, service. Create a list of things that you want to identify as areas that are key to you, and then invite people from the community who aren't a part of your parish to show up. This could be family members you have that are not a part of your community, and have them grade you, and get a sense of how well are you doing with that welcome, and be honest about where things are good and not so good. And then ask people from your community, what does welcome look like? What does hospitality look like? Because it can mean something different for everybody. But good parishes, a best practice is they have a welcoming culture. They have a culture that brings people in and invites them to stay. A second best practice is leveraging technology to automate tasks and to keep people connected. Technology, like what Pushpay provides, can help you learn some of this stuff we've been talking about people in the pew, and connect with parishioners in a unique way to fulfill the mission of your parish and ministry. So you can count people who are at Mass, but you don't have to track names. You can do all kinds of different things with a platform like Pushpay that will allow you to gather data to make decisions without being overly intrusive. The other cool thing I think that technology can do is, by providing us with that data and automating these types of tasks, it gives us the space then to build relationships with people. And I think that that's really key, is having technology is not necessarily the relationship builder. It allows us to do the hard work of building relationships so we don't have to do those other tasks. So if we want to build a culture of connection, we have to have the space freed up to actually go and connect with people, so we can leverage technology to do that. When you look at technology, I would encourage you to have a mission for everything. What are we going to use it for? How is this going to serve us? Is this actually going to help take things off of our plate? And then the last thing, again, goes back to those Eucharistic experiences, which is creating meaningful experiences, especially at Mass. So a couple of things that we can ask that are best practices. A Mass should be beautiful. And when I say it should be beautiful, it means it is the best that our parish can offer. We are giving the first fruits to our Mass. We're making sure that the music is the best that we can offer, that the liturgical space, the sanctuary space, is beautiful to the best that we can offer. And you'll see I keep saying the best that we can offer, because what is the best for one parish might not be the best for another parish. And I think sometimes we can get stuck in, wow, that parish has this amazing choir. We need a choir just like that for things to be beautiful. But maybe, and this is where honesty comes in, maybe you don't have the people to make that beautiful choir. Maybe you could put together a very beautiful scola, or maybe you could put together a beautiful, mass with music from a piano player, or maybe even more of a contemporary worship, collective. What is the best that you can offer? Sometimes we don't. And that's what beauty means. Reverence. Does something point towards God or point towards us? The best masses, a best practice for beautiful liturgical experiences is that they are reverent. So anything we do, is it pointing towards God or is it pointing towards us? Relevance. Is it where your community is at as far as worship goes? I think this is one key that when we say, is it beautiful, is it reverent? We also have to ask, is our preaching and is our worship experience relevant to the community, or are we doing something that is totally missing the boat? Because if we are offering a worship experience that is faithful to the church, there is still places that we can make sure that what we're offering and what we're providing to people is a relevant worship experience. As you're doing that, though, we need to have catechesis. We need to make sure that we are teaching about what we are doing at the Mass. So as we lean into these pieces of beauty or reverence or relevance, there still is teaching that's necessary. And this is where not everything that is relevant is going to be reverent or beautiful, and not everything that is relevant is going to work into Mass. But some things do need to be taught. And so as we lean into teaching why we do some of what we do, catechesis is important. And then preaching is key too. So for any priests that are on this or any deacons, our preaching is key. And that also can be a place for catechesis and relevance. The message that you give matters every Sunday. Yes, people are going to be at your church to find a sense of community, a sense of belonging, to receive the Lord and to invite people back into Mass, hopefully the next week, to go out and to share the good news of the gospel. But the preaching is the one place where things really can be relevant to your community. The message matters. And then the last thing in all of this, I think, which is a best practice, and it goes back to that secret shop principle, is just the idea that an outsider would be able to understand what is important, even if they didn't understand what was going on. So if somebody walked into your church today who had never had any experience of faith, religion, the Catholic Church, and after they walked out, they said, hey, or you asked this person, hey, what was the most important part of that? What would they say? Would they be able to gather from the way your community prays what is most important? And I think if we ask that question, it can be fairly convicting. Now, the last thing that's not on here, because I think sometimes we say, oh, that's so cliche, is prayer. That's why I didn't start with it, but all of this has to be wrapped in prayer. If we're going to invite people back, we need to be praying for them now. We need to be praying for them as we go through the process, and we need to be praying as we discern all of this. Prayer is vital. So there was a lot that we kind of tackled here today, Christian, but I know that there's been some questions that have been dropping in the chat. So let's cover some of those pieces. What are some of the questions you have? I know that there are a few here, and I know Gerardo has been working to capture them for us, and Christian, you've probably seen it through a few. But if you got other questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We'll do as many as we can with the time that we've got left.
Yeah, I see a question here, and I love that these questions are substantial. They're it's not a simple question. This is a multi-sentence question here. So Joel, be ready. How do we compete with what non-denomination churches are doing? How do we balance between hospitality and being welcoming and being reverent to the true meaning of the Eucharist? How do we reform people who have left to understand that they are missing when they go to non-denominational services? Couple questions in that one, but I understand the gist.
Yeah. And I think there's kind of a through line there. One of the challenge, we have to ask why. I think go back, that's a question that we don't often ask because we understand it, right? Like all of us here, we get man, the Eucharist, we're Peter in John chapter 6, Lord, where else are we going to go after the bread of life discourse? Where else would I go? And I think that we have to ask, we can't get frustrated. Well, how could they not know? How could they walk away from Jesus like that? Why did they leave? Why did they choose to go to another church? And if you're able to have some of those conversations, I've had some of those conversations, I think the answer can be kind of convicting. It's well, it never really seemed like that was important, or I was never really taught that. And so the belief in the Eucharist, that just seems kind of audacious and crazy. oftentimes it comes down to that outsider principle of people being like, I mean, if that's the most important thing, my community didn't seem joyful. They didn't seem like, Jesus was at the center of everything. They just kind of seemed like mass was whatever, and it was kind of boring. It wasn't engaging because oftentimes it wasn't beautiful or wasn't reverent. And so they went somewhere where they felt not only a sense of welcome, but also a sense of beauty or a sense of good teaching or good preaching. Because ultimately, if we haven't taught about the Eucharist and the way we approach liturgy doesn't elevate or showcase our deep belief in the Eucharist, then what people oftentimes, and again, this is on my own experience, so I'll give it to you anecdotally. Oftentimes, what people go to Mass to do is to hear a message, and they weren't getting the message that they wanted, or they didn't feel edified by that, or they didn't feel edified by the music. So they went to a place where they were able to hear a really solid preaching or really beautiful music that moved them. And that's oftentimes why people walked away. So I think listening is the first key there. I don't think that we can ever, like, when it comes to hospitality, I think welcoming people is key, but think of all of what welcome entails. Welcome means that we are ensuring that they find a good place where they learn and they know and they understand how we're leaning in.
Yeah. Yeah, I resonate so much with the outsider principle idea, because first impressions are everything. Like, if someone walks into your parish, they've never seen your parish before, they've never seen anything online or been to a welcome or anything. They just walk in the door and they don't understand what's going on. And then someone says, "Oh, well, you just come back next week and then you'll get it. Or you just have to do this and then you'll get it." In in today's world, that's just not it. If you don't do the first impression right, people unfortunately leave. So that's always a priority for me, is setting that first impression, making sure it makes sense to that outsider, with the outsider principle. I found a question here. How do we convince the pastor to transform?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the more challenging pieces,
Mm-hmm.
is because your pastor is the leader of your parish. He's the spiritual leader, and I think it is sometimes coming at like understanding your pastor's heart. We can have kind of a perception that our pastors maybe are stubborn or don't want to change, but there may be other things going on. Present the positives of change. Like, change takes a lot of work, and I think Amanda just posted in the chat, the priest is probably overwhelmed, and I think that's true for a lot of priests. Like, this stuff breaks their heart too. I will say there are very few priests that I have met that are just flat out like, yeah, no, I don't really care. I think that a lot of them are wrestling with these same questions. And so walking through the process of transformation is absolutely critical, and saying, hey, what can I do to help? Here's some ideas I have for how we might start small. How might we look at bringing people back? And I think that's where the Invite One initiative really becomes critical, because it's like an easy modular thing to say, what if we gave this a try? What if we leaned in and looked at some of these key pieces?
Yeah, I that is a hard one. And I've, kind of piggybacking. We're tackling the hard questions, Joel. Here's one that I'm actually gonna share my insight on, and Joel, please feel free to add in. How can we use projectors slash screens well in the liturgy that would not be distracting? Yeah, uh, I mean, Joel, we're both millennials. We're both more accustomed to that versus the traditional. But I mean, I grew up at a very traditional church, and with no screens, no TVs, no projectors, anything like that. But I still support it, because if done right, it can add to that beauty, right? If done right, a screen or a projector can add the same effect as that beautiful choir or the music or any decor, during mass. Like, and I'm looking at your background, Joel. Stained glass windows, they add to the beauty. Now yours are don't have any color in it, but I am just in awe of all the colors that come through stained glass windows. It just adds such a serene feeling when I enter into a church. You can do that. You can achieve that effect, if you will. You can achieve that result with a screen, having an art design, kind of like our slide deck that we have in this webinar. It doesn't have to be a plain PowerPoint or anything like that. The art direction can complement the decor and the atmosphere in your mass. And so what do you put on a screen? What do you put on a projector? Bible verses that accompany the homily, announcements, ways to engage. And they don't have to stay on at all times during the whole mass. You can have it on in the beginning and then have a slideshow of a myriad of colors, like a stained glass window, or you can just turn it off, and then turn it back on at the end. Do it how it feels right for your parish. It's different for everyone.
Yeah, I just this quick note. I think in one of the benefits of a projector, well, and it has to be beautiful, and that's what Christian is getting at, is when you are going to do projection at a mass, it has to be beautiful and elevate and add to the liturgy, not distract from it. That means you have to have the right software, you need to have the right hardware, and you need to have people trained to use those things and to do them well so that they're not distracting. But when done well, you put the words to music up and everybody's now able to sing versus trying to, page through a hymnal. They're looking up rather than looking down. When we talk about welcome and engagement, we can put responses up on the screen. So if you have a community where there are people who maybe are new or might not know all of the responses, those now can go on the screen. When they're not in use, we put up beautiful pictures of stained glass that elevate and kind of take those screens away. They make them just pieces of liturgical art for folks. And again, I'll say with the caveat, with permission, I have seen parishes even project the readings up on the screen. But if you have a bilingual community, I've seen them project the readings on the screen in Spanish or in English, depending on what the main of the mass was. So there's lots of benefits to that as long as they're done beautifully.
Yeah, and a little practical tip, if you're thinking, well, what software can achieve that beauty? There are, of course, some options. One of my favorite options is ProPresenter 7. That is like the church graphics software. It can do lyrics really well. It can put up graphics really well. It also integrates with Resi live streaming, which, of course, Resi supports the church through and through. So yeah, ProPresenter 7 is a great piece of software if you want to experiment and start utilizing beautiful graphics, beauty being the key.
Good questions. Yeah, what else you got, Christian?
Yeah. Let's see. We'll end, because we were coming up on time. We'll end with one more question, Joel. And this is another big one. There were so many good strategies that parish leaders and parishioners utilized during the pandemic shutdown to connect with the community. But it seems that these have gone by the wayside since being able to gather in person. What strategies could you recommend we could utilize again as if there were another shutdown? I mean, hopefully there's not another shutdown, but to connect with that online community, yeah, what strategies would you recommend?
One of the things that I thought was really kind of a cool idea that I saw. So I'll start off with an anecdote and then I'll give you some other notes. Was a priest locally they figured out how many masses they could run on a Sunday by shifting people through. So when things were kind of coming back in person and then were as a hybrid, they realized that they could run like 15 masses on a Sunday, and they got permission from the diocese to do like a 3 p.m. mass that would count as a Sunday mass on Saturday. And like they basically wanted to fit everybody in who went to Sunday mass normally with like a distanced, because that was kind of mandate from the diocese. So they ran like 15 masses back to back to back to back to back with like time in between for them to come and like clean pews and all of that stuff. But that meant that these masses were like 45 minutes long. So what the priest would do is he would give like a 5-minute homily, and then he recorded the rest of it, like the like longer version, and put it online for people. And I thought that was a really great way to do catechesis. So like I think one piece is all of the homilies and stuff were online. So I feel like pastors actually started to prep a little bit more and a little bit differently, knowing that these things were going to exist online. And I think there's a value in one, that preparation, two, the conciseness of like, all right, how do I do a 5 to 7 to 10 minute homily that's really pithy and impactful? But then I loved the idea as a best practice of every week being like, and I dig into this a little bit more, go to our parish website, and I've got a 25-minute teaching video that breaks this open a bit more. And just people know that there's like the homily extra or the homily post show. I don't even know what you call it. But I thought that was
homily plus. How about
yeah. But when we talk about catechesis, because like sometimes we try to fit so much into that homily or so much into the preaching because we're like, oh, this is so rich. But it's a great way for people, one, to connect after the Mass, but two, for people who are looking or seeking to have actually something educational that's connected to your parish that doesn't require them to go. I think some other things we've got to hang on to just in general, live streaming the Mass. We've got it set up. We have the ability to do it. Every Mass should be live streamed. And then I think you just kind of keep an eye on the numbers. And what I'd encourage you to do is to have some sort of login, even if it's just, hey, give us your email to access the live stream so that you can connect with those people and reach out to them to invite them to a Sunday liturgy. I think the fear with that and why a lot of people shut it off is like, well, people are just going to live stream Mass and they're not going to come back. Yes, there's a small percentage of people who are still live streaming Mass. It's not a large percentage, but it does provide a way for people who are seeking or kind of checking things out or are curious to come and join your liturgy. And I think that that's a pretty beautiful thing that we can have. And then I think just, looking at how we connect with people directly via phone calls, postcards, like those types of things are vital. And we did a little bit more of that, but now we're back to the in-person stuff and we're not thinking about, hey, how do we make sure that we find ways to connect with people all of the time, not just in person.
Yeah, definitely can confirm the way families, people operate today, and COVID really revolutionized this. It really kickstarted this. Is there's not many people who would walk into your parish without first seeing something online, whether that's a live stream or homily plus. Maybe we should coin that, Joel. People are going to see whatever is online first from the comfort of their home before they walk in to your doors. So it's not a zero-sum game. It's not a they'll never come in again because they have the live stream. It's a yes and situation.
Absolutely.
But I'm gonna thank everyone so much for tuning in today, Joel. Thank you as always. I'm a little sad now. We're halfway through the series. We only have one more session left. So session 3 is in 2 weeks, June 12th, and it is about discipleship metrics that matter, bridging data with mission. Because you can't make meaningful change if you don't know what people want. Data is key. Data is key. It's not about data, it's about relationships, but the data is the bridge. The data is the key to fostering those better relationships. And that's what Pushpay is all about. We love our data, but we love our community a lot more. And the data allows us to connect with that community. So just want to let everyone know, again, this session is recorded. All sessions are recorded, and you'll be seeing the replay for this session in maybe a day or two. And along with that, we are giving some visual handouts because we talked about a lot of stuff today, and we just wanted to give an additional handout to help help you absorb as much as you can. So again, next session is June 12th. You're all signed up. You will all get email notifications and the Zoom link for next session. And hope everyone has a great rest of your week. And we will see you in 2 weeks, June 12th. See you then.